This is you, crouched in the tall grass outside a village, machete in one hand, rope in the other. The sun hasn't risen yet, but you can already taste the dust in your mouth. Your heart pounds against your chest as you watch smoke rise from cooking fires inside the mud brick walls. In a few minutes, you'll charge through those gates. Some of the people inside will fight back. Some will run. Most will become your cargo. And you're about to become one of the most feared raiders in all of West Africa. Now you're probably wondering how you ended up here, so let me tell you. You're born in the Kingdom of Dahomey in the early 1700s, somewhere in what's now modern-day Benin. But this isn't the Dahomey you read about in history books with their famous Amazon warriors and elaborate palaces. No, you're born into the ugly side of this empire. The side that built its wealth on human suffering. The side that turned capturing people into an art form. Your childhood looks nothing like what kids experience today. By the time you're 5 years old, you're already learning which tribes make the best targets, which villages have the weakest defenses, which routes through the forest will get you home fastest when you're carrying human cargo. Your father isn't teaching you how to farm or fish. He's teaching you how to move silently through the bush. How to tie knots that won't come undone no matter how much someone struggles. How to spot fear in another person's eyes. You don't play games, you practice raids. Other kids your age are running mock attacks on empty huts, learning to work as a team, learning to strike fast and disappear faster. Your toys aren't wooden animals or carved dolls, they're miniature weapons, tiny clubs, practice ropes, everything you need to become a professional hunter of human beings. The kingdom depends on this trade. European ships arrive at the coast every few weeks, their holds empty, and their pockets full of guns, rum, and manufactured goods. The king needs bodies to fill those ships. Lots of bodies, and that's where families like yours come in. You're not just raiders, you're the economic backbone of the entire kingdom. By the time you hit 10 years old, you're already going on your first real raids. Not as a fighter yet, but as a runner. Your job is simple. When the attack begins, you circle around to the back of the village and catch anyone trying to escape. Sounds easy, right? It's not. These people are running for their lives. They'll do anything to avoid capture. They'll hide in wells, climb trees, bury themselves in grain pits. Your job is to find them anyway. You learn fast that this isn't a game. The first time you see a man get his skull cracked open with a war club, you throw up in the bushes. The first time you hear a mother screaming as her children get dragged away, you can't sleep for weeks. But you get used to it. You have to, because if you don't, you'll starve. Your family will starve, and worse, you might become the target instead of the hunter. The raids happen at dawn. Always at dawn. That's when people are sleepy, when their guards are down, when they're thinking about breakfast instead of defense. You and 20 other raiders position yourselves around the target village the night before. You sleep in the forest, listening to hyenas laugh in the distance and trying not to think about what you're about to do to people who've never hurt you. When the attack begins, it's chaos. Pure chaos. You smash through the village gates, screaming at the top of your lungs. The sound is designed to terrify, to make people panic and run in different directions instead of organizing a defense. Women grab their babies and sprint toward the forest. Men reach for spears and machetes. Children just stand there crying, too confused to move. Your job isn't to kill. Dead people don't bring any money. Your job is to capture. You tackle running villagers, wrap ropes around their wrists, drag them to the collection point where other raiders are building a human chain. The strong ones fight back. They bite, scratch, throw dirt in your eyes. You learn to expect this. You learn to hit pressure points that drop someone without permanent damage. You learn to move fast, strike hard, and secure your target before they know what's happening. The weapons you use aren't designed for warfare. They're designed for capture. Your club has a weighted end that can knock someone unconscious without crushing their skull. Your ropes are specially braided to tighten under pressure but not cut off circulation. Your net is wide enough to tangle multiple people but light enough that you can throw it accurately. Every piece of equipment in your kit serves one purpose, turning free people into valuable cargo. But it's not just about the physical tools. You also learn psychological warfare, how to use fear as a weapon, how to make your voice carry across a village so everyone knows the raiders have arrived, how to target the village chief first because once he falls, resistance crumbles, how to separate families immediately because people who are worried about their loved ones can't think clearly enough to fight back effectively. The whole raid takes maybe 30 minutes. 30 minutes to destroy lives that took decades to build. 30 minutes to turn neighbors into strangers, children into orphans, parents into broken shells of their former selves. And when it's over, you march your captives back through the forest toward the coast, where European traders are waiting with their scales and their ledgers and their complete indifference to human suffering. You tell yourself it's just business. You tell yourself these people would do the same to you if given the chance. You tell yourself the strong survive and the weak deserve whatever happens to them. But late at night, when you're lying in your hut listening to the sound of chains rattling in the holding pens, you know the truth. You know exactly what you've become. The march to the coast takes 3 days. 3 days of walking through dense forest with a line of captured people chained together behind you. 3 days of listening to crying that never stops. 3 days of watching people stumble and fall and get dragged back to their feet because the chain keeps moving whether they can walk or not. You carry a whip, but you rarely use it. Damaged goods sell for less money. Instead, you learn other ways to keep people moving. You control the water. You decide who drinks and when. You decide who gets to rest and for how long. You become the difference between life and death for dozens of human beings, and that power changes something inside you. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel dangerous. It makes you forget that you're just as much a prisoner of this system as the people you're dragging through the forest. The holding pens at the coast are worse than anything you've seen. Hundreds of people crammed into wooden enclosures barely tall enough to stand in. The smell hits you from a mile away. Human waste, rotting food, infected wounds, and death. So much death. People die in those pens every single day. Disease spreads like wildfire. The weak ones just give up and stop eating. The strong ones fight each other over scraps of bread and drops of water. Your job is to keep your captives alive until the European ships arrive. You feed them just enough to prevent starvation. You hose them down just enough to prevent disease outbreaks. You separate the troublemakers from the compliant ones. You learn to read people like books. Who's planning to escape? Who's thinking about suicide? Who might start a riot if you're not careful? The European traders are nothing like you expected. They're not monsters with horns and fangs. They're just men. Ordinary men who dress nicely and speak politely and negotiate prices like they're buying cattle, which in their minds they are. They examine teeth and muscles. They check for diseases. They calculate cargo capacity and profit margins. They turn human beings into numbers on spreadsheets without even thinking about it. You watch them work and realize they're exactly like you. They tell themselves it's just business. They tell themselves they're bringing civilization to savage lands. They tell themselves God wants them to prosper. But late at night, when they're counting their money in their ship cabins, they know the truth too. They know exactly what they've become. The money is incredible. More money than your father ever made farming. More money than your grandfather made crafting tools. One successful raid can feed your family for months. A good season can make you wealthy by village standards. Rich enough to buy land, rich enough to marry well, rich enough to send your own children to better lives in distant kingdoms. But the money comes with a price that nobody talks about. You start having nightmares, you start jumping at unexpected sounds, you start seeing the faces of your captives everywhere you go. When you're eating dinner, you remember the hungry eyes watching you eat while they starved. When you're sleeping in your comfortable bed, you remember the people sleeping on dirt floors in chains. When you're playing with your children, you remember the children you separated from their parents forever. The other raiders don't talk about this. Nobody talks about this. You're all supposed to be proud warriors serving your kingdom, heroes bringing wealth and power to your people. But you know what you really are? You're traumatized men who've learned to hide their trauma behind violence and greed. You're broken people breaking other people because that's the only way you know how to survive in a world that values human beings like livestock. You get promoted. The king notices your success rate, your ability to bring back healthy captives, your skill at reading villages and planning attacks. You're no longer just a foot soldier in someone else's raid. Now you're leading your own expeditions. Now you're the one making the decisions about which villages to hit and when. Now you're responsible for training the next generation of raiders. And that's your life as a slave raider in Colonial Dahomey. You built wealth on human misery, became skilled at breaking families apart, and learned to live with the screams that followed you home. You survived in a system that consumes souls, including your own. Because sometimes the most horrific thing about evil isn't that it exists, it's how ordinary it becomes.